I wanted to be present for my kids, even though
Right.
I wanted to be the best mom that I could. It like was not even an option for me, because it was so unhealthy.
Yeah.
So some of that, the emotional pain was being manifested physically in your body. Is that kind of what you're saying? Or
for sure. I was on all kinds of medications, and like my fibromyalgia was so bad. They had to put me on certain medications that took me 6 months to get used to. I threw up every day for 6 months just to like get the pain management under control. And, you know, it's kind of a vicious cycle. It's like you get really depressed, and that kind of feeds into the body aches and pains. And then the body aches and pains just make you more depressed. And so it's just this constant downward spiral of pain and sadness. And you can't, there were weeks where I didn't want to do laundry, or, you know, days where it was everything in me just to get out of bed and get them a bowl of cereal in the morning. Like it just wasn't even possible to be the best mom, no matter how much I loved my kids, or no matter how much I put them first. I physically couldn't do it. I mentally couldn't do it. Like it just was not even possible.
yeah.
Well, one thing that I thought was interesting is when Corrine had said that you could have a mental predisposition for something, but if the trigger is not pulled, it wouldn't be activated, which I found interesting because I've always thought that because due to the fact that my father had issues with drugs and alcohol, I've never tried any like hard drugs, like not even just in like, hey, we're all going to go, you know, we're going to go do coke. You want to like, no, I've never tried it because I'm worried that I would love it and then I would never be able to stop, because it's in my family that there's a history there.
Right.
So I've made the decision to just not even try, because, you know, like it's the same for the same reason that I can't stop buying Pepsi. You know what I mean? Like I know it's no good for me and I should quit drinking soda, but I just, you know, if I'm like, no, I need a little pick me up, you know what I mean? So I feel like it would be worse with other stuff. So I just found that interesting that like that's a thing, that's a legitimate thing that happens, is like it could be there and you don't know it because
it's
you
a
haven't
real
triggered
fear.
it.
Right.
And it's good that you think that way, because the way I understood it was like, you don't know what the trigger is. You don't know what took place to pull the trigger. So it could be like your grandpa passing away and you have no idea that it had that much impact on you, but the trigger was still pulled. So avoiding that, if you're worried about becoming addicted to it, it's not a bad thing. But it's fascinating to think about it in that way. And when I was reading that book, I was just like so mind blown. Like, yeah, the environment really does pull the trigger, because, you know, I lived with a single dad and there was 4 girls, and we had a really rough like upbringing because we were home alone all the time, and he worked 3 jobs, and there's all these things. And then for whatever reason, I never like recovered from my grandma passing away, still to this day. And it's been 16 years. And those things were traumatic for me, but they may not have been traumatic for somebody else. And so it's so hard to say like, what is the trigger going to be? Where is it? Where's that line where it's too much, you know, for you to handle?
Like I still, it's been 12 years since my grandma passed, and I still can't talk about her for very long before I get all emotional and start crying. And same thing with my grandpa. It's been a few years since he passed, and I still, like, I just can't even, like, my mother is like, you should watch these home videos. I'm like, no, I can't. Too many people in those videos are dead. I can't do it.
Yep. And so, some people don't, death doesn't affect some people like that. So you never know.
That's it. Like for me, I've had a lot of friends, a lot of family members that have passed away, and like I'm not heartless or cold-hearted because it doesn't affect me emotionally, but I just, like, my perspective is that like it's not like they die, like they're just like ceasing to exist. Like my belief system is that they've gone from one place to another. Like that, the whole idea of the third law of thermodynamics, like energy cannot be destroyed nor created. It can only be transformed or transitioned to a new place. Like, so, and that's not a religious belief system. It's just, it's not like I'm not worked up because they're no longer with me, you know?
Right.
It's like they are. I just don't see them in the same way. And and that, I mean, it sucks having friends and family die. Like, sure, but like that is a thing. Just happens.
Well, and that's the thing where it becomes different for everybody, like how a certain experience will affect them. Because I always believed that there was a heaven and a hell. Like, it's something that I so strongly believed in. But it was like the minute my grandma died, I had this it was like a real traumatic event for me. Like, I still have anxiety about it. My kids' grandma just passed away last week. And even though she wasn't related to me, I knew her since I was 13. So it was hard for me. And I have these moments of like impending anxiety that are just like debilitating, where I'm like, oh my God, she's like gone. That's all there is to it. She's like in this box in the ground, seeing black for the rest of forever. Like, she's just ceasing to exist, you know? And I never felt that way about death until my grandma passed away. So it's like, you never know like what that moment was where the trigger was pulled. And so being cautious because of those genetics is probably not a bad thing. Like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a bad way to approach that situation.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's always been my philosophy, is that I'd rather not even try because I don't want to find out. And
right.
Yeah, I wanted to find out.
Yeah, you did want to find out.
Yeah,
we're not judging.
Wanted to find it all out. Yeah,
we're not judging.
No. Even if you were, I wouldn't even. That's fine. You would have loved hanging out with me whenever I was doing lots of cocaine, Eric.
I don't know. I barely like hanging out with you now.
Yeah, no. Nobody likes hanging out with me when I was doing cocaine.
I think it's honestly for me, this whole like self-growth thing over the last, I got divorced in 2016, so it's been 4 years. It was 4 years in May. Like, growing myself and learning these different pieces. The main thing for me is like, we live in a society where everybody's like, give to everybody else, give all of yourself to everything you do, and that's great, but why the fuck are we not giving all of ourselves to ourselves? Like, that has been the biggest thing for me, is like, loving yourself first is not selfish. It is so freaking necessary. And maybe that's a part of it. It's like, you wanted to find out if you would become addicted because you did lack that love and respect for yourself, you know? Like,
that's 100% true. Yeah.
Yeah. So just like, stop listening to other people and just start loving yourself. Just start being selfish.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my biggest advice to anybody.
One of the most interesting things about like what drugs and alcohol did for me was, like, I went almost 18 years of my life feeling uncomfortable in my own skin and hyper concerned about what other people think of me. And as soon as I put those substances into my body, I stopped caring what people thought.
Yeah. But what if you could go back and only care about what you thought?
Well, see, that's like kind of where I'm at now, is where, like, I mean, I still want people to like me, but I don't need them to like me anymore. Like, like this, the like deep down, like ridiculous desire to be liked and loved and wanted to be around. Like, I just don't care. Yeah. Like, I'm completely content being alone. Like, I fully enjoy my own company today. And I didn't used to be able to say that. And there was a lot of work that I had to go through to get to that place. And most of it was like a revelation to me from doing personal inventory, putting my life on paper and looking at it from an objective point of view, and then recognizing the patterns that I had been creating for myself over the last 10 years, and then doing everything that I can to smash those patterns and create new ones.
Yep. It's the same thing for codependency. Like, it is the same steps, because I had to figure out what I was doing that I was trying to maintain that control in my life. So for example, like my boyfriend and I, we had plans to have dinner with his parents. We were very new in our relationship, and he had a day where he was like, I got invited, you know, it was a really bad day at work for him. We already had plans, but he was like, hey, I would rather go do this with my friends. And I could have, like, I thought of ways to lie to you and things that I could say, but I feel like I care enough to be honest. And he was so right, because guess what? My happiness is not his responsibility. But the old me would have done everything I could to, like, make him feel guilty or make him change his mind, or because no, we had plans and I need to be in control of if you're going to cancel those plans or not. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
He should be okay with putting himself and his needs first in those moments. He should be okay with being selfish, because I needed to learn to be happy by myself, with myself, in my own company. And I had to talk myself off that ledge for a good 10, 15 minutes. Like, yeah, it's not his responsibility, jackass, to be here making you smile and making you happy. Like, be happy being by yourself. Find something to do that you enjoy. Don't look at it as him canceling on you. Look at it as a, like, okay, well, now I have more time to do things I love doing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really just a shift of that mindset. You know, you cannot put your happiness in other people's hands.
That reminds me of a quote that's often attributed to Will Smith, where he's talking about his wife Jada, and he says, "Her happiness is not my responsibility. It's my responsibility to be happy, and her responsibility to be happy. And then when we get together, we can share our happiness with each other."
Exactly.
Which I think is a very powerful thing. And what you just said reminded me of when I was married. And my ex-wife didn't like it when we didn't do, like, she wanted to do everything together.
Yeah.
Like if she was tired, it's bedtime. Like if I wanted to stay up and like watch TV or play a video game because I wasn't tired, she would get mad at me for not wanting to go to bed.
Right.
And when I started to notice that we were having problems, is when she was encouraging me to go do stuff without her. Then I was like, oh, and it didn't even hit me until like recently that I started thinking about that, of like, oh, okay, that's where the first cracks were forming, when all of a sudden now it's fine if I go to the gym and I work out with a friend of mine from work. That's okay. But before there would have been an issue. So and there were a lot of things that I didn't even notice. When I had gotten divorced, this was so our divorce was final in 2017. And a buddy of mine had shared something on Facebook. It was like signs that you were in an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading the list, and there were a lot of things that I was like, oh. Oh. And it didn't even register that was happening because it wasn't physical. You know, like we weren't smacking each other around. It just wasn't, we weren't right for each other. It wasn't a healthy relationship. And I was like, oh shit.
Yep.
I didn't even notice until I read that article, and so many things started clicking for me. I was like, oh, okay.
So many people.
Yeah.
So many people. You're like, you're not, I feel like that's the story for everyone.
Yeah.
Because when you think of abuse, you don't think, you get the image of like the angry drunk dad punching holes in the wall and yelling at everybody. But you don't realize that, like, you've said a couple of times, walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
The fact that you're being made to feel like that is a form of abuse. Right? Yeah. Am I on the right track there, or am I just talking out of my ass?
Definitely hit the nail on the head. Anything that makes you feel like you are wrong for just being who you are, that's toxic. It's abusive. It's not healthy. It's unhealthy, period. There should be no reason why you would expect somebody to be someone that they're not.
Right. And that was my thing, is like, what did you even like about me at all in the first place?
Right.
Yeah.
Like I was a comedian when she met me, and then all of a sudden she didn't want me doing comedy anymore. Like, well, then what was it about me that you liked at all?
Yeah, Dwayne and I talked about this the other day at lunch. I was reading the book, Girl Stop Apologizing. And she talks about how we see people for who we are